different than when you take it out and it's dead. And the key difference between all other tests and this one is the cell membrane. Because how it works, if nobody can explain you how, but when a beam of light, which is quantized, every beam of light which comes out of that device is a certain amount of light. And we know already from hundreds of years ago that Einstein said it, light is also a photon, and a photon you can count. So many photons are coming out with a certain amount of frequencies, so momentum. And when the momentum changes, then you can gather from that, you can calculate that when so much red has been absorbed and so much green has been absorbed, there has been something responsible for that. And that are metals, because metals have a color. Magnesium green, cobalt blue, or copper red, or whatever. So they have a color. And that's, of course, their secret, how the algorithm is calculated. But anyway, when that beam of light hits your skin and starts measuring, it has to penetrate at least one cell membrane. Otherwise, it cannot measure at all. So the crux here, the major difference between these and other tests is the cell membrane. So for those who have a because what they do, you have that amount of light which corresponds to an amount of magnesium or zinc, and that's an amount, that's milligram or whatever amount it is, and you divide that by total body weight. And when you divide milligram by kilogram, you get a unitless expression. And that's understandable, I think. And unitless, you can also then say ppm. Then you call parts per million or parts per trillion, however you want to quantify it. Therefore, you see no expression on this sheet because it's a unitless measurement, but it is quantifiable. How do you do it? Well, it's in 4 steps. You measure 4. Because I knew at that time, with the first patient, when we don't see it extracellularly and we see it here now intracellularly, we just have to follow the first 100 patients and see what will be coming out of that. So we did that. We did a provocation test with dechelating agents. We did an Oligoscan, and we found this correlation. So the higher the mercury is in the spectrophotometrical analysis, the lower it is excreted in the urine. And the higher it is in urine, the lower it is in the Oligoscan, which is all logic, because when it is present extracellularly, it is not present intercellularly. And when it is present inside your cells, it will not come out with even one of the most potent mercury binding products. And the Pearson correlation is extremely high. Statistics friends have told me, oh, this is just ready for publication. And I said, yes, we already sent some, but it's difficult to get it accepted because they ask you for the method. And the method, of course, it is easy explainable provocation test, but the Oligoscan, yeah, how does that work? Nobody tells you. And because you cannot explain the method, they will not accept this kind of study. So the only thing we can do, I'm a pragmatic, I am really not interested in studies as well, I'm only interested in the benefit of patients. What I think what will happen is that very slowly around the world, some people will accept this method and will do their own research, and everybody who has already found something, that will all come together, and it will, in 5 to 10 years, will be accepted as something normal. And then major magazines will come back and ask for something to be publicized. But now it's very difficult because I cannot explain the method. Nobody tells me as well how the calculations are done. So this was especially found in people with high oxidative stress. So when you see a profile like this, high oxidative stress, when this is in the red, you almost invariably see a high mercury. That's the whole story from the beginning. Mercury causes mitochondrial dysfunction due to all these reasons with glutathione. Therefore, oxidative stress increases, and therefore the cell does not function anymore, and you cannot get rid of the metals. So, if you now still doubt the story regarding the Oligoscan, I have one more thing for you. I come back to this hair mineral analysis. This is a hair mineral analysis where we see at first a high potassium and iron. And I tell you, this is a Brazilian marathon runner. What proves that he is a marathon runner? That's the high sodium and iron. Why? He runs 40 kilometers each day, 2 days, and with their heels, they smash their red blood cells when they are running. And then when the red blood cell is kaput, destroyed, a lot of sodium and iron is released. And that's a constant high level in his blood, upper range, and that is just lost in hair. Very simple. So the method proves he is a marathon runner. But he was very concerned about his high calcium there, extremely high. And he did not use any calcium supplement or whatsoever. So, being concerned, he met someone else in Brazil, a French guy, and he performed an Oligoscan. And we just look at the calcium. Extremely low. So he was even more confused. Then I got the question, can you make any sense of this? And knowing my intra and extracellular story, and I had patients who had this kind of profile as well, we started an idea. And the idea was to show this is hair and this is spectral photometry, this is extracellular, this is intracellular. How can we combine these two paradoxal facts? This is one of my own patients, was also very low calcium. But what is important in calcium metabolism in our body? Everybody will argue nutrition, yeah, sure. But what is very important to get the calcium inside your cell? One, of course, is vitamin D. So that would be sunlight. You can easily measure if it's enough, yes or no. But there is another thing which is very important, because you can have enough vitamin D in your body, but it doesn't mean that it works very well, because vitamin D has to work on the vitamin D receptor. And what appeared now in all of these patients with very low calcium, they are all, so far in our clinic, 6 of 6. I report here 5 of 5. The Germans have now proven a few cases, and it is in all of these cases that the patients have a genetic SNP of the vitamin D receptor. They call this a single nucleotide polymorphism. This patient even had all 3 related genes mutated, which means, and now can prove why it is, the risk for these patients are osteoporosis, cardiovascular disease, tumors, etc., which is logical because not of the low content of calcium inside the cells, but of the continuous high concentration extracellularly. The patient is just in lack of the receptor, or has a dysfunctional receptor, and therefore it appears in hair and cannot be transported intracellularly. Knowing this, because I heard this morning the calcium paradox, this is the calcium paradox. You can check it now. Many laboratories can easily do it. It's about 80 euros, 8,000 yen maybe, or maybe here a little more expensive, I don't know, to check for the vitamin D receptor SNP. And knowing this, even if this were a lady with osteoporosis, would you give her high amounts of calcium? Yeah, if you want to kill her, then you give her high amounts of calcium. Calcium for these patients is toxic. And therefore you find always high amounts of calcium in blood in osteoporotic women, because they lack the capacity to transport it inside bone or inside their cells. So what you could do, you give high amounts of vitamin K2, because that is a substance which can bring extra of calcium, which is located outside the bones, more away from tissue. Vitamin K2 can liberate calcium from atherosclerotic plaques and can liberate it from cartilage tissue. You can give soy